Now to do the eyes, I pick the sphere shape and place the sphere in the middle of the eye groove. The size of the eyeball is about half of that shape, and the distance between the two eyeballs is another eyeball. So I'm just trying now to place the first stamp of that eye on the eye of the eyelids we would do. Now we begin the second phase of our head masterclass, where we add more detail to all the face anatomy and the upper body. Now to add some more detail to the cheeks section. In this area here, I will add some cheek muscle. So the shape I need to use again is the sphere. I tend to use the sphere a lot in the early point of making head. Squash the sphere using the form again into this sort of shape, and then make it the right size of the top part of the cheekbone and soft blend it using our soft blend, and go around the edge of the face where the ear and the indentation of the skull are, and place the first edit of the cheek. And then using the exact same edit, I just put another skull R and place the first edit of the cheek. And then using the exact same edit, I just put another one beside it just to blend it a little bit nicer towards the nose. Now, using the sphere, I will flatten it to get as flat as I can shape with the sphere, and turn round off the cheek, climbing on the nose like that. There is a muscle that goes on the side of the nose under the eye that is around here. Then I'm just moving the nose a bit, always sort of adjust and modify as you go. It's not because you put something once that you can't adjust it again. The whole process of sculpture is moving and removing your edits till you're happy, or at least this phase of it. So now the top part of the cheek muscle I've bulked up, and I can then get the cylinder shape and flatten it a little. And now, to emphasize the cheekbone, I will do a cut under that soft addition that we did to the cheek. It's nice to see the cuts in full sharpness first, and then soft blend to help you make that sculptural decision. And I'm just moving my hand till I get the right shape. I place a cut. No, it's a little bit too deep. Undo. Try again. And move my hand. Yes, that's a little bit better. use the other end of the cylinder to do the return of the cheekbone again. So I used one end of the edge of the cylinder base and the other end to do that sort of S shape. The base with soft blend on acts as a very gentle push tool that I use to just squash the cheek a little. And then I'm still moving this little muscle around. It's really just supposed to take that curve of the cheek and have a nice rounded effect from one side to the other. When you're happy with your shape, click the arrow on the video to go to the next step. Now we're going to add some detail to the jaw section. And what I need here is the sphere shape again. And I will use the form to stretch it into this very elongated ellipse. And I'll basically want to emphasize the jaw shapes just on the very edge of the face by placing one of those long ellipses on this end of the jaw and the other one on the lower end. And then I can go back to my Move tool by pressing Circle button, and I will move it to the exact edge of the jaw. And this other one, I want to just move it a little bit further, like that. And now I've got like my jaw. Jaw edge emphasized. I'll give some detail to the nose. Go to the sphere shape and subtract. Now using the subtract, I want to sort of tighten the top part of the nose, push it a little bit to taper, get that taper shape of the nose, smaller at the top and widening towards the bottom. With soft blend, I've tapered the nose. Then go back, reselect the sphere shape to get it back to uniform sphere. And with some soft blend, I will do the two nostrils and the center nose bowl shape. I can just place them roughly where they're supposed to be, and again, I will move them around using the Move tool. But just two for the side and one in the center, like that. And then I'll do another long, elongated ellipsoid for bulking up the middle section of the nose, again using the soft blend tool. And you can see we've already changed our nose shape from a square or a cube form to something more organic. Now, using the Move tool, I will just move around my different edits to try to get them in the right place. You can see me adjusting it, and the nose shape is getting more convincing. Again, the main objective in this phase is to block the nose form. I don't have to get it perfect, but I'm trying to get it take form and prepare me for my next stage of refinements that is to come. Just adjusting the edits here using the Move tool. Now I will pick the cylinder shape to do my cuts, just to make a very big cut at the bottom of the nose to make it a bit flatter at the bottom. move it around till I'm happy. There you go. And now, using the sphere shape, I'm going to cut 2 holes at the bottom of the nose with some soft blend on as well to get the nostrils. And just do 1 cut and a smaller cut in the front to make it a little bit longer. And that's our next phase of detail on the nose. I'm using the stretch tool here to just push the nose a little bit inwards, just like that. Move on to the next step when you're done. Now to work on the mouth and lips area to add more definition. I'll pick the cylinder shape again and switch to the subtract side and see if I can flatten the top of the mouth a bit more to get a better shape. Not every time I have an idea to do a refinement, I have to commit to it. Like, for example, now I keep putting the cylinder at the top and I didn't find a shape that felt right. In fact, the shape that we really need to do now is to extend the mouth from the sides a bit more, using the back of the cylinder to extend the mouth shape to the center point of the eyes, as we said earlier. Now that cut with a bit of soft blend and it feels right. The mouth is the right sort of proportion that ends at the middle of the eyes. Again, to see if I can try to get a curve at the side of the lips, I'm using the back of the cylinder with a bit of soft blend again. But it feels at the moment too fussy and unnecessary to put that now. Actually, what we need to do now is to get the philtrum, which is the recessed groove at the top of the lips under the nose. Using the sphere, I will stretch it with form again and add some soft blend. Move around the camera and in and out till I get the right shape. It doesn't have to be the right depth at the first time, I can change that later, but this is more or less like it. And then for the sulcus, I will, which is the groove under the mouth, I will use the same sphere and with a bit of soft blend again create that groove. Now the mouth is starting to shape up more. The next thing I want to do is to create the definition at the bottom of the lips. Using the cylinder again, I will stretch the shape and use the back side of the curve, the base of the cylinder, to get the definition of the bottom of the lips. Again, using a tiny bit of soft blend. That's more like it. Once you have a cut you like, move on to the next step. Now to add some bulk to the lips, I will use the very thin oval shape again and start with that center part of the lips. This almost like a V shape that we start with around here. It's important to look at the lips from the side and the front all the time because the decisions have to work in all axes. And using the same ellipse, I will add another edit beside the first one just to accentuate that V shape, always looking from all directions. And then I will stretch the sphere even longer for the sides of the lips and place them around here. Always following the contour of the face. And now we got the top section of the lips. I will just add one more between the center part and the side part to connect them a little bit better. And again, using the same shape, the same sort of stretched egg shape, I will add small additions at the bottom of the lips to get a bit of rounded form to them. Now, using the back of the cylinder, I will adjust the top part to get the center. See, this is what I mean by the diagonal line. To get the top part of the lip, I'm exploring which part of the cylinder will give me the cut that I need. So I first try this side and look at it from different angles. Place the edit, actually not right. Then I'd actually make a simpler choice of just using the flat side of the cylinder and push it like that. Every little turn of your hands creates a slightly different result. That is something that you have to keep trying with time till your eye and hands are more sympathetic to one another. I will now clean up the philtrum area again because due to this cut, I needed to adjust the philtrum again using the same stretched sphere with some soft blend. And then to accentuate the borders of the philtrum, I'll use a very thin stretched sphere and place it like that with some soft blend to accentuate the philtrum. But to make the hole a little bit less deep, I will put an edit inside there to make it less deep. Move on to the next step when you're ready. And now to work on adding some detail to the ear. The first bit I'd like to do is that small bit that hangs at the bottom of the ear. I don't really know the name of it. Using a flat, soft blended sphere, I create that shape. And then using the same sphere, I will just extend the groove behind it a bit more like that. It's very important to just know the shapes that you need to do rather than know the medical anatomic names for everything. Then I stretch the sphere one more time to create the section inside the ear that curves in a way that reflects the exterior of the ear. Using the back of the sphere, I sort of protrude it through like that. Again, switch off the soft blend to see better and then turn it on to blend better, if you see what I mean. That's exactly the curve I want to kind of repeat the curve of the ear again. And now using a small soft blended sphere, I will create the whole of the ear, just like that, like I'm making a little cave inside the ear. A few edits like that, all behind that bit that protrudes that we put first. So did about a bunch of edits like that. So now I will use the cylinder to shape or carve the shape of the ear a bit better. So I'll flatten the top with a bit of soft blend like that. Every ear shape is different, so now these are kind of artistic license choices. Some people have very rounded ears, some don't. Showing that it's nice to mix some sharp edges or some flat edges with rounded ones, always gives a nicer quality. Now this part that we've done before, I will use the sphere to create like a Y shape inside, and that is using the soft blend, gives you that sort of bit, and now you have the ear getting more detail. When you're ready, move on to the next step. And now to work on the brow area, I will use the sphere to add some detail there. So before I add some brow detail, I will do one little cut at the top of the nose using the sphere and some soft blend to get that little indentation at the top of the nose, like that. To add the brow detail, I will just use the soft blended sphere. The first edit goes around here like a V shape like that. I don't mind that it's a bit too extruded at the moment. I can push that a bit with the move tool. I'll just put a long one on the side to round off the top of the brow and another long one here. And then above them, I will just do a very big rounded one here to create the forehead lines, and the one more above it and a little bit tucked inside the head. Now to modify them, I will use the move tool and push them inwards so they don't extrude that much. Keep modifying their shape so they blend nicely into each other, looking at the model from all the different angles. I find that sometimes looking at the head from the bottom makes you see the angles and the curves better. One more edit I need to do is on the cheeks here, under the cheekbone indentation that we did before. I'll use a big flat sphere and put that edit with soft blend under there to give it some more bulk and not have it very accentuated as it was before. When you're happy, move on to the next step. Now, to add some detail on the neck and torso section, the main shape I will use is the sphere, and the first muscle I'd like to do is the one that goes from behind the ear all the way around the neck to meet at the center of the collarbone. Now this is kind of an S-shaped muscle, so I'm going to do it in several steps. First, I'm going to stretch the sphere into a long, thin one using form, and then place it behind the ear like that, and with a little bit of soft blend as well. I keep moving my camera around to try to get it in the right angle. And scale it up as well with the uniform scale. And now I place the first one, I place another one at the bottom and another one, and as I'm placing them, I'm scaling them down a little bit until they both meet each other at the center to create that V shape at the bottom of the neck. That is the kind of shape we're looking for. Now I'm going to bulk it in the center, as that muscle is biggest in the middle of its journey, with a bit of soft blend like that to blend it more. So now this is the muscle going from behind the ear to the center. I exit my sculpture and modify the tilt of the head a little bit. And that's really why we did them in two different models. To get the tilt of the head right in a sculpture is very difficult, and it's much easier to have it in a separate part so you can tilt it after the fact and move it to get the exact right head tilt. Once you have a good position, move on to the next step. Now I go back to the neck and add the muscle that connects the neck to the shoulders. This is like the trap muscles. And I will stretch my sphere with a bit of soft blend and descend from the neck, slope towards the shoulder to create the slope arch like that. Now, you can see the pedestal is really getting in the way when I'm working on that lower section. So I'll use this feature here which hides everything else. By just pressing on the button, everything in the scene is hidden except from the sculpture that I'm working on. Now I'm going to work on the throat section, again using the sphere, stretch it, and place a bunch of edits, one at the top and one at the bottom, sloping inwards like that. Now I turn on everything again, and I can see I've added that muscle in that awkward space a bit easier. Move it a bit with the move tool to the front to arch like that. That is the kind of shape I'm looking for. Just like that. Now to do the collarbone, I will stretch the sphere into a very long, thin shape like that. And from that V shape that we did earlier, with a bit of soft blend, I'll place the first edit of the collarbone and then the second one. The second edit, I'll make it a little bit more horizontal than the first one, which climbs upwards a bit. They create that sort of shape. And then I will do almost the mirror image of that two edits on the top part of the scapula bone on the back. These are the bits that we need. And now to connect the neck to the shoulder, a little bit of using the same stretched sphere to create that muscle and vein that goes from the throat outwards like that. We're not doing every muscle and every vein, we're just picking the important ones. Again, to flatten or to bulk up this trap muscle, I will add an extra edit here. And then turn and see the neck from the back, and to fill in that indentation or that gap, I will put that sphere with soft blend to fill in that space. We're not really doing all the anatomical information, but as you can see, just using a bunch of spheres, we have taken the neck and upper torso to a more refined result. And now we're about to start phase 3, where things get more organic. This is actually my favorite phase, because you can really express your own individual style. Here we go. And now for the third phase, we've sped up the video a bit more because we're focusing more on techniques rather than the step-by-step operations. Again, using the soft blended sphere, I will carve the top part of the nose and that section beside the eye that gives the eye a more the surround groove it needs. This is a stage where you rely more on your feeling and your eye, like this tiny little bit in the eye, and to add the wrinkles, for example, beside the eye, I will use the soft blended sphere. I usually rely at this stage on the soft blended sphere to add detail and the cylinder to cut and to create the lines. With a soft blended cylinder, you get quite nice lines, like here to do the wrinkles. I'm using the cylinder and using the soft blend to get those marks, while adding with the soft blended sphere gives a muscle-like structure. I used a very thin sphere to make that indentation behind the nose, to carve the shape of the cheek and how it meets the nose. And you can see it's like in clay when you're carving little details, using a mix of the soft blended cylinder and the soft blended sphere. I'm creating that mark here. And now it's the time to sort of pick up any little pieces that I want to tune or refine. This part here where we did the philtrum before, I curve a bit so the curve can come outwards like that using the sphere. And this is a stage of sculpture that is more about small marks and small details, turning around my head and seeing what needs work, adding a muscle here or there. There is that muscle under the mouth, and using the cylinder to carve now my chin. It's nice in sculpture to not have everything grounded. It's nice to have that chiseled, faceted look. And you still keep the curves that you've created before using the sphere. But now using the subtract, I make accentuations and create these facets that give a nicer sculpture quality. So it's like a stage where I turn, like this little cut here around the ear to make the shape more sculptural and anatomically satisfying. It's all about going around the head now and cutting and carving to describe the shapes with more sculptural sensibilities. Click the arrow on the video to go to the next step. the eyelid that we created before using the 3 cylinders that we stamped. I can now do extra cuts on it to carve it. The head as well, adding those facets like we did to the chin. And when you turn soft blend on, it softens the cuts. So you can go between very sort of semi-sharp cuts to softer cuts. Move a bit around like the bottom of the eye. Very refined, small decisions that add more sculptural detail. Now I've changed to the smear tool, and this is a different style of sculpture than what we've done so far. This allows me to do a more chiseled look, and to do that I'm going to pick a mixed color to do the hair. Like now that I am picking just one color, you can see that it just puts it in black. Instead, I'll pick several tones of dark colors, of black tones and dark blues and dark reds, and drag them onto the color mixer to get a variety of tones in my smears. So see, the smear places multiple edits in one press, so you can actually paint with your sculpture rather than place one careful edit after the other. I kept this technique till we got to a good place with the head, and I'm going to use the smear tool to make the hair, as the hair is more forgiving and we don't have to be very correct with the marks we're making. So using the smear tool for hair is not a bad place to start, as you move your hand fast and it makes sculptural marks. I still have my mirror on. I've turned on the looseness tool as well, which is on my secondary motion controller, and it adds this fuzziness to my sculpture by pressing and twisting. And all the shortcuts I'm using are going to be written on the side of this masterclass. So using the loosened mark, and I'm using the smear tool now to create the hair. And as you can see, I'm still turning around my shape. Because I chose a mixed color, the color is not just coming out as one brown tone, it's picking different shades that I have picked in my color mixer. And I'm just carving around the head that I did before, making the marks of the hair, still using the mirror to do the first part, and not really worrying too much about getting the shape perfect because it's the hair. Now I'm going to turn the mirror off to get an asymmetrical design for the hairstyle, putting just different marks to suggest the shape of the hairstyle. And the nice thing about the loosening tool, which allows you to make your shapes more impressionistic and fuzzy, you can always tighten it again to do a tight cut like that, and then you can get a variety of texture. You don't have to have it all fuzzy. You can do a fuzzy mark and then a sharp cut. And between the techniques that you can arrive at, see here I am changing the looseness while I'm working to variate the texture of my model, using different cuts to form that hairstyle. So it's nice that although I placed earlier the shapes without that much intention, using the cuts I now can carve the silhouette into something more appealing, and using the cuts to create indentations that suggest hair direction. This stage you can spend ages and you can do the whole sculpture in that technique, but I thought to show it to you on the hair rather than doing the whole sculpture with it, just to get a taster of what sculpture looks like. It's more sketchy. I will continue to add more detail in the next step. It's nice to zoom out and zoom back in to see what you're doing, and from a distance. Now I picked the spray paint tool, which allows me to paint my model after the fact without adding any sculptural form. You just pick the color and then you paint over your sculpture. I'm going to use this and I'm going to soft blend it using the same soft blend button and gesture from before. I can soft blend the color instead of the form. And I'm going just to choose different tones of color to paint my head and put some dark parts in the dark sections. It's always nice, even though we have light describing all the shadows, it's nice sometimes in the areas of grooves to add darker tones in them. And now I'm just painting with a very light opacity where the hair meets the head to suggest a blend of hair onto the skull, onto the head. And the thing I'm going to do after that, this is just color, and I can pick color from my object, which I'm doing now. I'm using the color picker, and it allows you to pick colors from the scene as well as mix them. That's one of its perks. I'm also painting looseness on my model. So even looseness is a parameter. You can pick the looseness tool and make an area that was initially sharp more fuzzy. Looseness is a parameter. I can pick color from my object, which I'm doing now, onto the head. And the thing I'm going to do after that, this is just color. And I can pick color from my object, which I'm doing now. I'm using the color picker, and it allows you to pick colors from the scene as well as mix them. That's one of its perks. I'm also painting looseness on my model. So even looseness is a parameter. You can pick the looseness tool and make an area that was initially sharp more fuzzy after the fact as well. So you can use that technique to do facial hair, for example. First, I'm going to color the beard section with low opacity green or greenish brown. And you can decrease the opacity of your marks so they don't appear in full opacity. That helps you get more of a blended color. So I'm first painting the beard section or the stubble section with that color. And then get the looseness tool and dial up the looseness. And when I paint over the model, it gets a bit more fuzzy in this area, giving a suggestion of stubble. Giving a suggestion of stubble. Get the looseness tool and dial up the looseness. And when I paint over the model, it gets a bit more fuzzy in this area, giving a suggestion of stubble. That's a nice technique to use it to do hair or to use it to do grass in a scene. It's pretty useful. Going between painting, and this side of the model is appearing more green because there's a blue light hitting the face, so that's what makes it look a bit greener. Click the arrow on the video to go to the next step. Now I go back to sculpting again. So you can jump between sculpture and painting. Using the smear technique, I just carve a few bits here and there to get, again, this imperfect result. It's nice to not have everything feel like it's made out of soft balls. The balls or the spheres were useful to start with to get the general shape of the model, and then you can start carving with the smear tool just very small indentations like that for the chin. You can spend ages on that stage and really take the model to a very handmade quality. I didn't want to spend all the masterclass doing this technique, as this is something that you will spend time and find your own marks, but I just wanted to give a quick display of what it looks like to use it on top of a more careful process. Now I want to color the eyes. So I'm going to first darken around where the eye meets the nose, use some darker tones there. And also on this side of the eyelid, we also tend to have it being darker. Sometimes these are just shadows really, but I think painting a little bit of that accentuates the model and makes it look more convincing. To describe the eye in one sculpture, because in this masterclass we're not doing the eye as a separate element that we articulate and have the eyelids close and open. This is more of an illustrated solution rather than an animation-friendly one. So I'm just going to create a indentation for the eye, where the eye goes. And now, instead of adding the iris in the same sculpture, I'm just going to do a new sculpture just for this black bit in the center of the eye, so I can choose a different material, as we only have one material per sculpture. So for this section, I'm going to use a shiny material to get just that little bit of shine on the iris. So you can see you can have variety of materials in one model using this technique. You just create a new sculpture and then you place it, intersect it with your other one, and you have a variety of shininess. The main head is matte and this part alone is shiny. Now I go back into the previous sculpture and paint around it with a dark color to blend it more and not make it stand out. That starts to work. Always looking at it from a distance. Once I'm happy with it, I take a copy of the sculpture that I did using the clone tool in assembly, and I copy it back in the sculpture again to color around and blend it with the sculpture. There you go. We've got shiny eyeballs here, or shiny irises that have a little bit more of a convincing result. I will continue to develop this area in the next step. To do the eyelashes, I still want to sort of tighten the eyelid a bit more, because the eyelid is quite a complex shape. Initially, we started with the cylinders, but now that we're in this stage, we can cut further and just blend it more into a more flowing shape that is thinner and more convincing. You can spend much more time just doing that until the shape is completely right. It's always nice to work from a reference photo or even a reference sculpture that you have beside you, so you can try to recreate that. Now, back in my sculpture, using a very loose cylinder that I've used the looseness dial on to get it to look as fuzzy as I can. And I'm just drawing the eyelash on top where the eyelid ends. And because it's a male bust, just try to make it thin enough to work. It's a fine-tuning. You have to sort of keep looking, zooming out, making it smaller, making it bigger, till it works. Again, using my mixed color to do the eyebrows, using the same technique we used in the eyelashes, very loose, and it's because within the sculptures you can have the varying looseness that we used in the hair and the stubble. Now I'm adding those very small stretched cylinders with looseness on to give that result. I'm not really expecting you to follow everything I'm doing here. This section is intended to give you insight into some sculptural techniques. Click the arrow on the video to go to the next step. Adding and cutting and carving the shape can go on. You really get to a very high level of detail that finds the right balance between the detail of the head you want to do and the sculpture stylization. Sometimes you will want your sculpture to be very soft and all realistic, or you want it to be very faceted and stylized. At some point, we will have many different sculpture and art classes to talk about stylization and techniques. The bottom part of the eyelid is much smaller than the top part, just enough to describe the shape of the eye, and it's towards the outside rather than it going all the way to the inside. And after I've added a few sculptural edits, now I'm just using spray paint, only to do the last part. So I can go from adding sculptural additions to just painting over the model. And every time you catch your model from a different angle, you can go and correct and modify. Here I'm making where the hair meets the skull or the head flatter so it flows better. That's the purpose of moving around so much, that you keep seeing different angles and questioning them and refining them further. The coloring as well, you can keep layering, adding dark tones and then adding light tones on top of the dark tones to make them more blended. Here I'm just adding the muscle that makes the indentation of because there's a muscle that comes on top of the eyelid. The eyelid isn't that big. We do the eyelid huge first, and then in the very end you cover it with that muscle that goes on top of it. And you can do that technique of softening areas as much as you like. But that takes our model to a more refined result and shows you a very quick insight into some more techniques that are useful to see. Now I will show you how to save your work from this scene. First, select both parts of the bust. Then open the assembly menu and hit Group, which is in the context menu. Now, with the group selected, click Save as a new creation in the context menu and follow the instructions. So there we have it. That's the end of our sculpture masterclass. I hope you found it enjoyable and you feel inspired to make your own masterpieces. We're looking forward to seeing them in the Dreamiverse. Hello, I'm Kareem, Art Director of Media Molecule. Today I will be doing a sculpture masterclass. I'll be modeling a male bust and going through basic modeling techniques to block the general form of the sculpture and build up to more detailed techniques and more sculptural philosophies and attitudes to find your own personal style in Dream. I hope you find it inspiring for you to start sculpting and find your own style in Dreams. And now we begin sculpting our head. The first phase is to block out the general shape of all the head and bust components. Here we go. This is a sculpture pedestal that I've made earlier for the purpose of this tutorial. Also, I've made the space around us and put in it some of my favorite sculptures for inspiration and reference. I've also pre-lit it with nice lights to help us sculpt in a nice atmosphere. Before we start the sculpture, I would like to recap that it's very important to have learned the camera controls. In the Dream tutorials, you will find tutorials just focusing on the camera controls and tells you all about the different nuances of it. The most important one is the grab cam, where pressing your move button on your primary controller will grab the point in space that your imp tip is over. This is the imp tip on top of the imp here. So if I put my imp wherever I want to go, press the move button, pull myself towards that point or push myself away, you see that the camera is moving accordingly. It's very important to have practiced this in order to proceed with the sculpt tutorial. There is also other features in the camera, like zooming, which makes you zoom in right close to an area in order to work on very fine detail. I would recommend that you practice using the camera controls now, and when you feel confident in them, click the arrow on the video to go to the next step. The first thing I'm going to do is open my sculpt menu by pressing the T button on my secondary controller. I will pick the modes and choose the sculpt mode. Sculpt mode defaults on shapes. The shape I'm going to start with is the sphere shape. When I start pressing my T button on my primary controller, I can smear my shape continuously like that. This is the tool that sculpt mode defaults in. Instead, I'm going to change to stamp shape tool, which allows me to stamp singular stamps of my choice. Change to stamp shape tool, which allows me to stamp singular stamps of my chosen shape. This is the tool I'm going to start with in my sculpture. Now I need to stretch my sphere shape. To do that, I'll use form. I tap my two controllers together, which puts me into the form state. Once I'm happy with that, I press the T button on the secondary controller to lock the shape that I've stretched. Something like that. Now I need to turn on some guides to help me place my first edits. To do that, I will open my menu again, press the guide menu and select the Stay Upright guide. Pressing that fixes my shape to upright position. Only and doesn't go in any other orientation. By pressing the second toggle beside it, it allows it to only rotate by 90 degrees only, like this. They rotate by 90 degrees only, like this. The next guide I'd like to enable from the start of my sculpture is the mirror guide. This allows me to work in symmetry, which is very useful for modeling ahead. To do that, I will go to the guides, enable it, and this activates the mirror guide, which places a copy of every edit I do. This is very useful in modeling ahead. You can see the mirror plane as well. Is drawn in the center. I will switch that off because I prefer modeling without. Now to place my first stamp, it's drawn in the center. I will switch that off because I prefer modeling without. Now to place my first stamp, I'd like to get my two mirrored copies exactly aligned on top of one another. To do that, I try to get that center line aligned as much as I can. When I do that, I press the T button on the primary controller to place my edit. For the second edit, For the back of the head, I will turn my shape by 90 degrees and intersect with the front of the head. I would like to also blend that shape onto the first one more softly. To do that, I will activate one of our other features called the soft blend. To soft blend, I press the square button on my secondary controller and twist my hand like that. This allows my shape to blend with the previous shape in a softer way. And when I'm happy with the blend amount, I press the button on the primary controller to place my edit. For the second edit, for the back of the head, I will turn my shape by 90 degrees and intersect with the front of the head. I would like to also blend that shape onto the first one more softly. To do that, I will activate one of our other features called the soft blend. To soft blend, I press the square button on my secondary controller and twist my hand like that. This allows my shape to blend with the previous shape in a softer way. And when I'm happy with the blend amount, I press the T button on my primary controller to stamp my shape like that. Move on to the next. Step when you're ready. The back of the head is a little bit too long. To modify the shape, I go to my stretch tool, grab the back of the head, and move it inwards like that. Now I need to change to subtract to suggest the jaw shape. To do that, I will pick a different shape. The cube and press this button up here to change to subtract. This allows me to cut out shapes instead of adding them. There is also a shortcut to toggle between adding and subtracting, like that. From now on, I will be using this shortcut. I place my cube at the bottom of the head to cut the jaw shape, and I need to scale this cube up a little bit. To do that, I use the controlled scale, which is pressing the button, the circle button on the secondary controller, and twisting my hand upwards like that makes my shape bigger or smaller. Notice that the guides, the upright guides, are still on, which makes my shapes still upright. I'll do this first cut here for the first shape, and then go on the back of the head to create the back of the jaw shape. Always remember to press the move button and move your camera around to keep examining your edits, that they are what you need them to be, just like I'm doing here. This is roughly what I'm looking for. Then I press the T button. Now the shape of the head is starting to form. When you're happy with your shape, move on to the next step. Now, I would like to exit my sculpture. I'll open my menu again and start. Start a new sculpture. Pick the cylinder shape. You don't have to get the shape or the size of the cylinder right from the start. I'll just stamp it around the right position. I'll pick back my stretch tool to stretch that cylinder into the right size. Stretch it from the top and from the bottom. The next thing I will do is pick another shape, the sphere shape, another time, and stretch it using the form gesture into an ellipse shape, like this. Scale it up, form gesture. The next thing I will do is pick another shape, the sphere shape, another time, and stretch it using the form gesture into an ellipse shape, like this. Scale it up, and remember I need to be in the stamp tool, not the smear tool. Now I can soft blend the shape into this cylinder. And do another stamp on the side for the shoulders. This is roughly the shape of the upper body and the neck. I will exit the sculpture again, and now I will position and scale the two pieces of my sculpture to get the right proportions. I've switched off my upright guide and now using the cut tool and turning the upright guide back on to get a clean cut at the sculpture again, and now I will position and scale the two pieces of my sculpture to get the right proportions. I've switched off my upright cylinder shape. You don't have to get the shape or the size of the cylinder right from the start. I'll just stamp it around the right position. I'll pick back my stretch tool to stretch that cylinder into the right size. Stretch it from the top. And from the bottom. Form gesture. Remember, and the sculpture at the right proportion at the bottom for my bust. I got the shape of the top part now and the bottom part of my sculpture. I keep toggling between turning upright off and on for the purposes of the cuts being straight or not. Now I've switched it off. I don't really need it anymore for the work we're doing. I'm now going to scale and move my two pieces around till I just get them relatively a good proportion to each other. I selected the two together by using my X button and selecting the two, and now I can just move them both. To realign any shape, I just select it, and while holding my T button, I press triangle to realign it. So this is a good tip to know. Scoping back into the bottom section again, without the upright guide on anymore, and now I can scoping back into the bottom section again, without the upright guide on anymore, and now I can tilt the neck cylinder a little bit to the front. Scoping back, into the bottom section again. Without the upright guide on anymore, and now I can tilt the neck cylinder a little bit to the front. Exit the sculpture again. This stage is all about trying to get a good relationship between the two pieces so I can start my next stage of sculpture. And now I'd like to re-enter my sculpture and pick the cylinder shape. Use it to cut the eye socket using a little bit of soft blend in that cut as well. The eye socket is normally around the center of my next stage of sculpture. And now I'd like to re-enter my sculpture and pick the cylinder shape. Use it to cut the eye socket using a little bit of soft blend in
アイデアが出ないなら、ドリームズユニバースの奏でるセッションに身を委ねて、自然とアイデアが湧いてくるはず。私たちがテーマを用意するから。あなたはその夢を描くだけでいいの。それとも誰かさんの夢を覗いて遊んでみる？誰の夢が一番素敵か競争してみましょうか。さあ、いらっしゃい。